So I wanted to welcome back to the Press for Wine Prince Lyrics podcast, Laura Tiebert. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Jason. Great to be here.
Thanks. I'm glad to have you back. I mean, you've been pretty busy, haven't you?
I certainly have. Yes, I have been very busy with my Living Like Prince blog this year. And yeah, it's really taking off and getting a little media attention. And had a story in the Chicago Tribune, and then appeared on television, live television in Chicago. So yeah, it's great to see the idea catching on.
Yeah, for sure. And we're recording this episode in July, and July is your month to basically just have fun. I mean, just kind of, do what Prince would do and just enjoy life. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes. So the theme this month is play, and actually that's why I picked this song when you gave me the opportunity to think about a song from Controversy. That's one of the reasons I picked this song today. So I'll let you talk about that, though.
Yeah. So we're up to episode number 30 of the podcast, and so we're going to be covering Private Joy, which is the fourth track on the Controversy album. Controversy only had 8 songs total, so we're about halfway through the album. Private Joy kicks off the side B if you had the LP or the cassette. So this is the first song you would hear if you flipped it over. And Private Joy was not released as a single in the United States, but it was the B-side to Do Me Baby, which was the third single released off Controversy. So it received some notoriety for that. And it also received some notoriety because it was covered most famously by LaToya Jackson. She covered it for one of her recordings in 1984, although once again it was not released as a single even by LaToya. But yeah, it's an interesting song. It's a great song. It's very upbeat, very danceable. It's got kind of playful lyrics, and as you mentioned, with your month being of Living Like Prince with play, Private Joy is an apt song to discuss play because it's all about being playful with your lover, and there's a lot of euphemisms for sexuality and just a playful song in general. And I really enjoy this track particularly. I think it's a really fun song. What are your thoughts on Private Joy as a song off Controversy?
Yeah, I think it's one of those songs that can seem a little too poppy at first, but it can really grow on you. I mean, it's one of my favorite tracks on Controversy. I mean, I hope it's okay to say this, but it's a young song, right? To me,
Yeah.
It feels like, yeah, it's got that youthful energy, and it's playful, and it actually has the other distinction in just my personal love of Prince's catalog of having one of my favorite play on words that he ever did, which, I just love the idea that he's taking the common phrase pride and joy and kind of flipping it right into private joy. And I just think it's so clever. And that's what initially drew me to the song. And then, yeah, it's really grown on me.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's a good point. We've heard the phrase, "You're my pride and joy," or "She's my pride and joy." And if you say it really quickly, you can maybe think that somebody's saying Private Joy. And yeah, that is clever. It's very clever. And as we get eventually through the lyrics, we'll dissect a little bit why, or maybe talk a little bit why in this particular song he's talking about somebody who he wants to keep private. Or I mean, why does the relationship need to be private? And so those are questions that I think of when I'm listening to this song, but we'll get to that as we get through the lyrics a little bit more. But Laura, do you have any background on the song? My understanding is that it was written by, or it might have been inspired by Prince's relationship with Vanity Six's Susan Moonsey. Is that what your understanding is as well, or have you heard that?
Yes. So that is included in the book. The Rise of Prince that Alex Hahn and I co-authored, and I need to give Alex the credit for this story. It was in his original biography of Prince, 2002's Possessed. So yes, absolutely. Alex writes in Possessed that it was the lyrics were directed at Susan Moonsey, and Susan was a longtime friend that Prince began dating after the Dirty Mind tour. So it has that distinction, and also I think too, Jason, like it's worth talking a little bit about a couple of firsts that are related to Private Joy, and that's really revolving around the recording of it. One was that it was the first song to be recorded in its entirety at Sunset Sound Studios in Los Angeles. But secondly, and possibly more significantly, it was the first song that Prince used the Lynn LM1 drum machine on. And as we can imagine, the Lynn LM1 was in a way Prince's private joy
Right.
to instruments. But yeah, it was, I mean, the Lynn LM1 was new at the time. It was really the first drum machine that incorporated sounds sampled from real drums. So instead of sounding sort of plastic or fake, the Lynn sounded much more like a true instrument. And as we know, the Lynn LM1 sound came to really represent Prince in a lot of people's minds. And, if you go to Paisley Park still today, you can see the Lynn, his beloved Lynn, behind glass in Studio A.
Right.
You can see it.
Yeah, and that's interesting because with the Lynn drum machine, Private Joy was the last track. It was the last track recorded for the Controversy album, and since it was the first to use the Lynn drum machine, then it would make sense then for that discovery and the use of that in late 1981 to then transfer over into the recording of 1999, which is where that drum machine probably has its most prominence and became kind of synonymous with the Minneapolis sound and Prince's sound at the time. So that totally makes sense that all the other tracks recorded for this album didn't have it, and then Private Joy, the last track recorded, did, which bled right into the 1999 album recordings in a year later. So thanks for that little tidbit of information. It's very interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Prince, there's a famous quote that is in Possessed and The Rise of Prince from Bobby Rivkin, who, of course, was a drummer. And I've seen this around a few times. And Bobby says, when I heard Private Joy the first time, that was the moment I knew things were going to change. And I think any drummer would maybe be quaking in their boots.
Right. I'm being replaced by a drum machine.
Yeah, I'm being replaced by a machine. But, it's apparently it's really hard to record drums. It's expensive. It's slow. It takes can be hard to get a good sound. And, the Lynn gave Prince, this great sound. And, he really could record anywhere. I mean, he could record in his hotel room, which he'd been known to do. So it was freeing for Prince.
Yeah, he could record day or night anywhere he wanted using this drum machine, and it was, like you said, portable and easy to use. One other thing I wanted to mention about Private Joy before we get into the lyrics is that, as we talked about, the covers, and there was also another cover that was from a singer named, I don't know how to pronounce it, Cheyenne or Shine, off of the Weird Science soundtrack. I'm not familiar with that version whatsoever. But then also the end of the song ends with like this gnarly blast of guitar, and Prince finishes the song that bleeds right into Ronnie Talk to Russia using, just playing this guitar over the drum beat. And that was sampled and used for the song Orgasm off of Come. But I find it a little funny so this song was inspired by Susan Moonsey from Vanity 6, but then Prince uses Vanity's vocals, I use vocals in quotation, for the song Orgasm. So it's just kind of funny to me, like he uses a sample from a song written about one band member and also uses samples from vocal samples from the other two-thirds of the Vanity Six for that song as well. So only one missing is Brenda for that song.
Lucky Brenda.
Right. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
Orgasm is one of those songs that, when I get to it one of these days, I'm like, well, I don't really have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
But
No, that'll be an interesting one.
for
Do
sure.
that one solo.
I think I probably will. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be a short episode. Okay. So if you don't mind, I think we'll just start getting into the lyrics if you're ready.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Okay. So, Private Joy, with the first verse, he's got a couple verses and a couple choruses, and it's like with typical Prince songs in there, he has a bridge in there and has some kind of spoken word outro or some kind of interesting, pseudo rap, proto rapping going on. But in the first verse, he starts off the song, "My little secret, my private joy, I could never let another play with my toy. My little angel from heaven above." And he goes, "Oh, I think I'm falling in love." And that's verse 1. So in the first verse, he's making reference to his private joy, his secret. And as I mentioned earlier in this episode, he's talking about it being a secret, secrets and privates, and not yet necessarily using private in terms of, the body parts, but private meaning, something that he wants to keep to himself. And that's why in the next line he says, "I could never let another play with my toy." So he's referring to this woman of this song as a toy. So, and that's interesting. So it's almost like I get imagery of like a kitten playing with like a ball of string or just batting around. And I know it's really weird imagery to be thinking of when you're thinking of a Prince song, but for some reason, toy, I think of children. I think of kittens. I don't necessarily think of adults in an adult relationship when I'm thinking of the word toy. So I don't know. For me, that's a little interesting terminology to be calling her a toy in the song.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are some things about this song that, if you think too much about it, could be somewhat, worrisome or concerning, but or
even a little degrading.
or degrading, and I think too, I think that maybe the term toy too also makes this feel so youthful. I mean, it's interesting, and the idea of private, right? Because I feel that, this album with, the lead song being Controversy is so much about life in the public eye. Mm-hmm. And, the fact that this song is about something that's private just for him. I mean, it did raise, for me, the juxtaposition, right? So as Prince is coming to, fame and being seen in the public eye, certainly he would want something, right, to be private and not be, available to the media and the public. And I think the song is really about that. It's about something that, is just still for you. It's sort of sacred, right? It's just between two people. It doesn't have to be, a huge romance in the public eye like Prince and Vanity were.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I like that about the song. I like that he seems so joyful too, to have something that's private.
Yeah. And he never name checks anybody in the song. He never gives any clues as to who he's talking about, which obviously, if we agree that this is him trying to express joy of being with somebody without there being a lot of cameras flashing and paparazzi or people writing about it and trying to dissect it. Because I feel like this was that kind of song, as you mentioned, where it's like, I'm just really happy when I'm with this person, but I don't want anybody to spoil it for us. I don't want this to get spoiled by fame and by, having it being talk about too much, or for people to dissect it too much and look too deep into what it was, because it was probably a very casual relationship. I don't know for this for a fact, but it doesn't feel like they were ever, in a place where they almost got married, like maybe like with Susanna or somebody else later in his life. But at the time, he seemed to be very happy in this relationship.
Yeah, I think that, Susan was I think she was a significant relationship for him. And I think she, according to Alan Leeds, who was interviewed for Alex's book Possessed, Alan felt that she was a very good relationship for Prince, very grounding. And, unfortunately, I think this was a time when, Prince was young. He was starting to live the rock star lifestyle. And, he was possessive of Susan Moonsey, but also at the same time expected her to tolerate his sort of messing around with other women. I mean, at that time, he also had connected with Jill Jones, who he met when she was a backup vocalist. She was backup vocalist for Tina Marie on the Rick James tour. So, I mean, there was, there are some kind of tough things about this song. I think if you think about what was going on in Prince's life at the time. So somewhat of a double standard, I think you could say.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I wouldn't argue with that based on what I've read as well, which is obviously a lot of the same stuff that you co-wrote. So yeah, we're on the same page there. But this first verse feels like it could be sang by, like a teeny bopper type singer, like like a young teenager, like a Tevin Campbell or somebody else that Prince has worked with that was very youthful at the time. Like a very young singer could sing this first verse, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a really cute puppy love type song. But then there's some terminology used later in the song where it's like, oh wait, no, that doesn't work anymore. So,
that's right.
So first verse is very cute and innocent.
Yes, that's right. We'll go with that for right now. Yes.
For now. It goes into the chorus, and I ain't going to tell nobody about my little pretty toy. All the other kids would love to love you, but you're my little private joy, my private joy. You're my private joy, such a pretty toy. Joy, you are my private joy. And so in the chorus, he even talks about kids. All the other kids would love to love you. So this also gives more credence to the thought of this being a song that could be sung by a teenager or somebody who is singing about, like I said already, puppy love or a very early relationship. One of those relationships where it's like one of the first ones you have, your first girlfriend or your first boyfriend, where you feel these things for the first time and you just want to, sing off the mountaintop how much you love being with this person. So that's the chorus. What are your thoughts on the chorus, Laura?
I mean, it's sweet, on one level, it really is sweet, and it really does speak to puppy love, youthful love, and, just just that soaring feeling you get, when you're first connecting with someone and you're falling in love. And, even the way Prince sings joy in this song with the, real soaring notes. I mean, I love that part about this song because I feel like the music sounds like the word, right? I don't know, I don't know if there's a word for that. I know that onomatopoeia is when a word sounds like what it's describing, like plop or screech or something. But the music sounds like joy. It sounds like that soaring, happy, excited, ecstatic feeling you get when you're falling in love with someone.
Yeah, and me reading the lyrics can't do it justice, obviously, and I'm not going to attempt to sing joy in the chorus the way Jason. Prince does. Sorry, that's just not going to happen. This is where I insert the chorus into this podcast so people can actually hear the way Prince sings it, because me reading it isn't going to do it justice. But the chorus goes on. I mean, it as you mentioned, the way he sings it is very soaring. He stretches it out. I mean, joy is a one-syllable word, so you wouldn't think he could stretch it out that long, but he does. He very clear he stretches it out for a long time to just kind of make it sound as joyous as possible, just singing the word joy. And what I still get from this, listening to this song at this point with the first verse and listening to the chorus, it just feels like a young person singing about their first relationship. And maybe the reason why that the person wants to keep it private. I mean, we kind of hypothesized why we think this song would have been something that Prince wanted, or, his relationship with Susan would have wanted to keep it private from, the press or from people interested in his personal life because he was a musician. But if you're not famous and you're just wanting to keep a relationship private, maybe you're just trying to avoid pressures from parents or from friends who don't understand or won't understand, what's changed, or, they don't get it, like with those early relationships. My friends don't get it. My parents don't get it. We love each other. And this is why I want to keep it private, because I don't want anybody to dismiss how we feel because we're young. I'm sure that's a relatable thing for a lot of young people to think of that and like, well, I'm just not going to tell anybody because I don't want anybody to sour it for me.
Yeah, and when when you're first dating someone, sometimes you do almost want to just exist in this bubble where it's just the two of you and the world isn't intruding on your relationship. And that happens later, I guess, inevitably, but sometimes in the beginning, you just want to exist in that sort of magical world together, and that's what this feels like for me.
Yeah, for sure. The whole song does. Okay, so then we move on to verse 2, and this is where, if this was being sung by a 13 or 14-year-old, you kind of get a little like, what? This isn't appropriate. It starts off, "You're my little lover, orgasmatron. Only I know, baby, what turns you on. You're my little secret neon light. Girl, I want to turn it on, turn it on, turn it on every night." Okay, so it's no longer very innocent, we just love each other, we're holding hands, maybe a peck on the cheek.
Yeah.
Okay, so verse 2 is about sex. So he's now explaining how aroused he is with her and how good the sex is, basically.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love how it takes this little twist and turn with every verse. And I like that visual of "you're my little secret neon light," because I don't know if you had this in the early 80s, but these sort of little neon flickering lights, light bulbs were in, and it was really cool to have a lava lamp or one of those in your room. And I just get this visual, of the early 80s. And I mean, I think it's really important too to like keep this song in kind of the context of the time. And it's just so, it's such a different feeling than what was popular, what was sort of mainstream popular then. And it does have kind of this little sort of anarchic, subversive feel to it, especially with this verse. It kind of takes this turn, and
Yeah.
I mean, I actually looked up what was trending in the top 40 when Controversy came out. So when this song first would have been heard, and, it was like Lady by Kenny Rogers, and it couldn't really feel much different, but
No,
yeah. So I love this. I love this verse and the turn it takes. You now know this is very much an adult relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Even though he still referenced kids in the chorus.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever.
We'll just
kind of let that pass. So the orgasmatron. Now, I wasn't familiar with that term, so I also had to look that up. And I guess it's a reference to the Woody Allen film Sleeper, is what I have to assume, since that came out before this song was recorded. I had never seen Sleeper, so I wasn't familiar with the term orgasmatron. But yeah, it's a reference to this device in the Woody Allen film Sleeper from '73, where two people enter it and it brings them quickly to orgasm. So there. So that's an orgasmatron.
Here I thought it was a term of endearment for Susan, but okay.
Well, I mean, it's both, I guess, because he turned this phrase that was found in this film to, because the film is it's supposed to be like science fiction, so it's supposed to take place in the distant future. It doesn't take place in present tense in the 70s, so it takes place in the future where I guess everybody's kind of cold and frigid, and these machines have to exist in order to get people to enjoy sex and enjoy orgasms, even though they're not doing it the natural way. They need these machines to bring them to orgasm. and that's
Oh.
what I guess orgasmatron is. But obviously in the song, he's referring to his lover as the orgasmatron. So
Oh, you taught me something today. I would have
yeah,
never
so
played this song the same way. That's great.
it's still a term of endearment. So you're absolutely right. It's just based off of something science fiction related from a Woody Allen film of all people.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Okay. We need to make a list of, all the movies Prince obviously watched and go through them as well. I just heard Susanna Melvoin was talking about how she and Prince watched Being There, the Peter Sellers movie,
Yep.
over and over again. So now I've got that on my list to watch, but clearly I have to add Sleeper as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's good information because you got to think of maybe the lyrics that he was writing when he was with Susanna in the mid '80s. I wonder if there's any Being There references that we can decipher later on.
I'm on it, Jason. I'll be on it. So
Thanks,
yeah.
Laura. Always giving me something to think about.
Yep,
Appreciate that
that's
about
right.
you.
That's right.
Okay, so we've established now that even though there's references to kids in the chorus, this is an adult relationship, or at least it's a relationship that involves sexual intercourse. So then go back into the chorus, and the chorus is the same, so he doesn't really do anything different with the chorus again after the second verse. So I won't repeat that. He's still talking about his pretty toy and private joy, and the soaring way he sings joy at the end of each line, or joy and toy. But when he says joy, he sings it very soaringly, and that's obviously, I would say, on purpose and by design. And then he gets into this bridge, which goes, shoot me up, baby, let's take a trip, which is, kind of a strange drug reference, but whatever. I can't get enough of your private joy. And then he says the word joy, and then he follows it up with another line that rhymes. Joy, such a pretty toy. Joy, you are my private joy. Joy, then he takes another stab at the drug reference. Shoot me up, baby, let's take a trip. Joy, can't get enough of your private joy. Come on, honey, baby, get up. And then we get into like a little bit of an instrumental at that point. So here he's just kind of playing around with the words and playing around with the phrases, private joy and pretty toy and, taking a trip and things like that. So I think these lines are really just kind of meant to have some fun with the words and the phrases and put some more lyrics out there before getting into the kind of like the instrumental bridge.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's not, a huge amount of depth in these lyrics, but it's all about sort of the music at this point, I think.
Yeah. And then towards the end of the song, he has like this, and I said proto rap earlier because it's kind of like he's not really singing it. So he's just kind of speaking these lines or even partially screaming these lines. I strangled Valentino, and then not somebody, it's Prince, backing, singing kind of like as a background singer. So he says, I strangled Valentino, he strangled Valentino, been mine ever since, been his ever since, because, it's supposed to be like somebody else saying it behind him, like, oh yeah, I'm just reiterating what he's saying, but I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about him. If anybody asks you, you belong to Prince, come on baby, get up. So I strangled Valentino, and I mean, obviously he's talking about the famous silent film actor Rudolph Valentino here, who was obviously well known for his good looks. So he's basically taking out the competition
Yep.
through violence.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes, man. You got to strangle Valentino and get him out of the picture. And I just think it's.
Wonder, Jason, I was like,
Uh-huh.
I was picturing in my mind that, how, I don't know, when I was young, like my girlfriends and I would have nicknames for everybody, including the guys we dated. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, Susan had some ex that Prince decided to just call Valentino, in a disparaging way. So,
Oh
essentially
yeah.
he eliminated Valentino.
Yeah, I mean that's a good observation because obviously at this time Rudolph Valentino had been dead for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way that he was legitimately competition for his private joy or for Susan in this song. So yeah, it makes sense that, he did it to reference somebody that people know who was well known for his looks, but also kind of like, hey, get Valentino out of here, and just use it as a nickname for, boyfriend X or, competition guy in number one.
Yep. That's how I imagine it anyway. That's
Yeah.
my studied interpretation of this important lyric.
Right. And I just wanted to bring up that for whatever reason, he has like this weird connection to Valentino, because he mentions Valentino when in the lyrics to Manic Monday. How does it go? It's I was kissing Valentino by a crystal blue Italian stream or something like that.
Yeah. That's right. I love that.
Yeah, so he mentions Valentino again a few years later when he's writing the lyrics to Manic Monday. So I just wanted to bring that up just because it's kind of a neat connection.
Well,
there.
And then, of course, Salma Hayek's daughter, Valentina, does come up much later in the career, too. So then we have the female form of Valentino in Prince's catalog. So we really covered it all.
And when I was listening to the LaToya Jackson version, I needed to find out how she changed these lyrics, because this wouldn't really work. Because then he also refers to himself in the first person, you belong to Prince. So he does that here. He's talking about himself and he refers to himself in that way. And so I want to know what LaToya did, and she changes. So throughout the song, she changes the pronouns to make it fit for a female singer, for a straight female singer, and what she does there is that she changes Valentino to Cleopatra, and then instead of belonging to Prince, she had to change the line before because it needed a rhyme, but she says something about you belong to Toy, as short for LaToya.
Got it.
So
okay.
she's able to use the word toy completely differently in the song, because she just, whenever the word toy comes up in the song, she flips it around to make it refer to herself as, like her nickname for herself. Yeah.
Hey, nicely done. Well played, LaToya.
Yeah, she definitely did what she needed to do to make the song hers in her own way, but still keep the basis of the song intact. So yeah, it was good. It was clever.
I wonder what Prince thought. He probably wasn't amused knowing Prince and covers.
I think I don't know if I read it for sure, but I thought I read they had asked. I don't know if they asked Prince or if they just asked Warner Brothers. We want a Prince song, and but they didn't want it to do a cover of anything that had already been successful or popularized previously, and so this song just made sense because she liked how modern it sounded. Because it's the Lynn drum machine, and when she was recording this in '83 or '84 or whenever, the Lynn drum machine was still a very modern sound. So it makes sense that she would, her record company or her father would have picked this song for her because it did have a modern sound even a few years later.
Yeah, it's a good song, I mean, it really is. It's really catchy. So I can see, and especially if she can, use the lyrics to her advantage and make them make sense for her. I like the Cleopatra being the counterpart of Valentino. That's nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody from the past.
Yeah.
But, still well known for their beauty. Okay. So yeah, the outro's cool. It's fun to sing along to for sure with each one of those lines.
What do you think about the "You Belong to Prince" line?
Yeah. So the "You Belong to Prince" line. I don't know why he chose to refer to himself in that way, and where it's like, he's not playing a character anymore. Like if he calls himself Prince, he can't play it off as just I'm writing a song about, an experience or about somebody else. I mean, he puts his own name in there, and it doesn't say you belong to me, you belong to Prince. And I don't quite know why he chose to do that. Is it the
first time he refers to himself by name in his music?
Yes, I believe that is true. I believe that to be true. I can't think of any other instances, and up to this point we've only have 3, full-length recordings to refer back to, and it's the first time.
Yeah, so there we go, a third first for Private Joy. So it's it is somewhat of a, I mean, I don't want to call it a landmark song. I don't know if it's that significant, but it does have a few firsts. I mean, it's, and I think with this line, I've seen this line quoted so many times in the fandom, if anybody asks, I belong to Prince, that kind of thing. So I would say this is probably the most famous line from it, at least from what I've seen. And it does somewhat, I mean, I can't talk about that without also bringing up the elephant in the room, which is, Prince's controlling nature. I mean, it comes out loud and clear here. And, it wasn't only relationships. It was, with the record companies, he wanted to protect his rights. He was very protective of his intellectual property, right? And at times even going to the extreme. And this is sort of a dark side of Prince. While there is a charm to it, I won't deny that. There is definitely a charm to that. You can't ignore that this was an aspect of his personality for good and bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does give you that kind of like feeling where you're thinking the lyrics, and it has a lot of joy to it, and there's a lot of fun aspects to it, and you're thinking of it in a very innocent way, talking about a relationship and talking about, the sex is good and whatnot. But then you get to this, like you said, possessive side, and yeah, it has some dark aspects to it if you're really thinking about it in depth. Just one of those songs where you can kind of dismiss it and just think, well, that it was of the time, or these types of things were just, this is how songs were written, or this is the kind of thing that was done in the 80s. But at the same time, it doesn't really change anything. It doesn't change, maybe how the person feels to be in a relationship with a very controlling person. It doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it easier for them just because it was more commonplace to be open about it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. And I mean, and also, there were things Prince would, phrases he would use frequently, you can hear them in the early years. And talking about someone being mine, I mean, he had When You Were Mine, right, and Dirty Mind. And so there are things that he just repeats. I think he likes the phraseology, he likes the idea. And so, I mean, I don't want to get too serious about it, but I think thinking about the real life relationship with Susan, and, his other dalliances at the same time, and, his controlling nature. I mean, I'm not someone who wants, even though in my own work, I'm trying to put forward sort of the positive lessons that, I took from Prince's life, and how you can apply those to hopefully also be more successful yourself. But I don't also want to just wash over that there were also some dark sides to Prince, and we all have that, right? Like, Prince wasn't a perfect person. Right. And I think now, when you read this song today, this kind of thing jumps out probably in a way that it wouldn't have at the time.
Right. Yeah. I would agree with that. There's been changes in how we think of male-female relationships and the power dynamics at the time. I mean, because he had the power. He was the artist. He was the musician. He was the man who, could fire you in a heartbeat if he wanted to out of the band. She could have fired her from Vanity 6. He had all the power. So,
mm-hmm.
That's
it was right.
Yeah, he called the shots.
Well,
and I think
if you think about, like, I mentioned the Kenny Rogers song that was on the charts at that same time, Lady, and that was all about You're My Lady. And there was a lot of that at the time. It just was normal. It was how a lot of men sang of relationships in that way. So it's not, I mean, I think at the time it probably would not have struck people as at all unusual. But now I think, it's interesting to look back and think about the way that we all just sort of presumed that this was how things were. I mean, that always strikes me. But it's important to keep these songs in context of the time too.
Yeah.
And so all in all, I think it's a really poppy, catchy, upbeat tune that was a great opener for side 2.
Yeah, and I don't think either of us are trying to say like, oh, this song needs to be canceled.
No.
Like we need to never play this song again because of this line. We're not definitely neither of us are trying to say that. We're just saying, looking at it through a 2019 lens, you might pick up on some things that people wouldn't have back then, and that's all we're really trying to say with that.
Oh yeah, I'm still going to be hopping around the room dancing to this song. I mean, listen, it's
And
still, and there is a very sort of endearing feeling to it too, you know.
Yeah, for sure, it's a very endearing song. It's a fun song.
Yeah.
I believe I misspoke earlier. So when you say something like when you're singing it and you refer to yourself by name, that's actually in the third person, correct?
Yes, you belong.
Okay, so he was
That's
referring
right.
to himself in third person, not first person. So I misspoke earlier. Whatever.
Okay.
You know? I'm not the writer, Laura. You're the writer. You can correct me.
Okay, I should have caught that.
But yeah, anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. So I don't really have anything else to say about Private Joy. I think we kind of did a good job of the best we could with kind of talking about the lyrics. It's a fun song, as we both agreed. It has some things that are interesting about it for sure. The different references to famous people past and scenes from movies, science fiction, Woody Allen films. So I think unless you have anything else to say about Private Joy, Laura, I think we'll probably close the book on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of falls into, on this album, you know, sexuality, private joy, maybe Jack You Off, sort of, you know, in kind of the punk feel of those songs. And then I just really think it's an appealing song. Yeah. I enjoy it very much.
Yep. I always crank it whenever it comes on. So
That's right.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks again, Laura, for joining on the podcast. If you want to let anybody know where they can get a hold of you, check out your blog, and maybe you want to give them your web address or something.
Sure.
Along
Yeah. Follow me at lauratiebert.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter with that handle.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me again, Laura. And
thanks.
We'll do it again. You've been listening to the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. I want to thank Laura Tiebert again for joining me on a Private Joy episode. I had a great time talking to her, as always. A wealth of knowledge and great insight. So check Laura's blog out when you get a chance, lauratiebert.com. And thanks again for listening. Hit me up on thepressrewind.net, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I'm on all of them. And until next time, thank you very much.